Dr. Seekon, welcome to TMZ Live.
Thank you for having me.
So, Doctor, why don't we start with broad strokes here? The administration appears to be coming out saying Tylenol is linked to autism when it comes to pregnant women who take the drug. What say you?
So the conversation surrounding Tylenol in pregnancy and autism is not a new one. And where this first thought came from was looking at large-scale studies where they asked women to fill out questionnaires about the exposures that they experienced during their pregnancy and tried to relate it to the outcome of their child and their health. And these are called associations. These aren't studies that are showing a causal link. In fact, the best designed study that came out a year ago, it involved over 2 million children, and they found initially this very weak association, but then they drilled a little deeper and actually looked at sibling pairs, and they compared within the same household siblings that where the mom had reported using Tylenol when the child was in utero versus not, and that difference then dissipated, it went away. And what they concluded was this is likely explained by genetic influences in the environment of the household, maternal health. But it certainly, there is no new data that has demonstrated a causal link. There is no updated science to base any of these statements on. And as an OBGYN that treats many women in the first trimester, it is actually imperative to treat fever stemming from infection. We know that fever is an independent risk factor in the first trimester for certain birth defects involving the heart, the facial features, as well as neurodevelopmental outcomes, things like autism.
So, doctor, is it possible that whatever it is that pregnant women were taking the Tylenol for, that, as you just mentioned, a fever, scarlet fever, something like that, that could be what's causing?
Yes. When it comes to biology and science, I mean, everything is so multifactorial, right? So it is a very oversimplified view to draw a link between I took Tylenol when I was pregnant and now my child has XYZ. There are so many other things that can play a role. And the point is that the data that has in the past shown an association does not prove cause and effect. And that's really the main takeaway here. And we, at this time, don't have a safer way of treating fevers in pregnancy. And all of the major associations, like the American College of OBGYNs, for example, continue to stand by the statement that Tylenol is safe when used appropriately. It's safe and effective. And it's really important to take women's pain seriously and to treat fevers appropriately when people are pregnant.
So what a lot of people think these days, and I think it's because of COVID, in large part, is that science is a moving target to some extent. And the more you look at things, sometimes the conclusion changes, and I think some people are thinking, well, now they're saying there's no link, but there's another study that shows there is. So why isn't it in 3 years people are going to say, oh, we found the link after all? And I think that's one of the reasons people are skeptical.
Yeah, I think, this is why we have to trust the experts, people that have spent years learning how to interpret scientific data, because when you take things at face value, it's very easy to ignore all of the other factors that can give rise to the outcome that's being studied.
So for you have patients that come in who are pregnant and will have heard this news. I would imagine that this could potentially cause a bit of a panic among pregnant women.
There is no new information. And so I think it's important, and it's hard to do this, but I think it's important for us to ignore the news cycle or the headlines unless it's rooted in some actual evidence, because that's really what we need to be looking to as we make these types of recommendations that are so important, not only impacting the health of pregnant women, but their future children.
I'm thinking just, a woman who is, 9 weeks, 10 weeks pregnant and develops a fever, and they come to see you and they say, well, I read this, and you say to them, if you don't take Tylenol, you're putting your baby in jeopardy of a birth defect, a serious one. And then they're thinking, but they're telling me if I do, I'm putting my baby at risk of autism. And it must be horrific for these pregnant women to come in and have to make that decision.
No, of course. And I don't really think that is the decision. I think it's so important to look beyond the headlines. And I'm so grateful that you're having me, an expert, on to talk about this, because you can imagine from our perspective, we're just wondering where is the new data to back any of these statements up. And it's a really terrible thing in public health when there's any sort of, miscommunication or mixed messaging, because, it leaves patients, ultimately they're the vulnerable ones that are left with really difficult decisions and a lot of confusion.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Well, doctor, we really appreciate you being here to help us break this down. I want to let people know you've written a new book. It is called The Lucky Egg: Understanding Your Fertility and How to Get Pregnant Now. Is it out now, or is it coming out coming in January?
Coming in January, but you can pre-order it now. And the whole thing is really providing an evidence-based view of everything you should know about your fertility.
Okay. We really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.